Hello, Dave, CEO of Phonexa here at ASW 2026. I'm here with George from Whitell. We're here with all of our best buddies in the industry, as you can see in this huge cavernous space. Hopefully it looks good for you guys. George, can you give us a little background into yourself, a little bit about Whitell, and then we'll go into our particular partnership.
I don't think I'll be able to follow that, just to be candid. That's a very, David is, with his UK accent, he can just go on, and I could listen to that.
It's a real accent, though. You can't. You make it sound like I put it on.
I know. I'm going to try to do
cut the camera
accent.
and I stop. Yeah.
Yeah. But no, we met probably 6 or 7 months ago, I believe. But before I go into that, just a little bit about myself. I graduated, got college back in 99, and went to the 2000 Olympics and was a professional athlete for almost 10 years, and then got into the performance marketing space. In 2011, for a company called Beachbody, we were marketing products like P90X, Insanity, all the fitness infomercials that a lot of people have probably worked out to. And then I transitioned into the agency world and really kind of doubled down on CPL, performance marketing campaigns. I'm on the outbound side for a company called Whitell, and we are a performance dialer. That's how I position it. Because once the data, I think all these marketers here at this show are very good at getting whatever intent it is, getting that consumer into the CRM of the brand that they're working in. And then where the biggest Achilles heel is that I've seen in my career, and I think most people on the call tracking side and the dialer platform side, is getting a hold of that customer and getting them transitioned into an inbound call, right? And that's what we do. We have a very good team that goes out and makes sure that we put that consumer on a cadence, whether it's dialing them, SMS, and also email. We have a platform that integrates with everything and get that consumer on the phone, onto the sales floor. And that's why I partnered with Phonexa, because they have that call tracking where they can route calls, attribution, duration-based, and also intent-based, which I hadn't seen in the marketplace as much. So that's kind of where we connected, and we started referring mutual clients back and forth, and that's why we're here.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And to say you weren't going to be able to follow what I said, and then you throw out there that you're an Olympian and a 10-year professional athlete.
Well, it has no.
I have an accent. You're a professional athlete.
Well, yeah, it was, for me, I've been playing catch up because I've only been in the performance space for 15 years. And I'm almost 50 years old, right? So because 10 years, I was off playing a sport where when that was over, I had to really play catch up. So I'm at a position right now where 15 years is pretty good in this space, but 20 would have been a lot better, or 25, right?
You say that. So, I think, again, I'm not going to answer, I'm about to ask you some questions. We have some more technical stuff to dive into about the partnership, but I'm interested in this. We actually haven't spoken about this much. How do you think your professional sporting career helped you when you first transitioned into the space? Because when I meet you and I talk to you, I see a lot of, we have a lot of commonalities in terms of our outlooks on certain things. I'm a I run performance-based businesses.
Sure.
Your business is obviously performance-based as well. And a lot of people can't really get to grips with that. We see a lot of people here at shows like this that focus on brand, for example, and they can't transition into performance because they have these big budgets, they go and spend that money, and they're not actually very adept at analyzing ROI and true performance at its heart, which is kind of all we do.
That's it.
How do you think your background in professional sports helped you in this industry? Because I actually see some synergies.
Yeah, I think just how we see it as performance, whether it's contact rate, ROAS, CPA, all those things. When I was an athlete, it's the scoreboard, it's statistics, it's performances, and not only individual statistics, but it's also the team. That if everybody's on the same page, I think that's the biggest thing in any company or any team, is everybody has to be on the same page. And that's what I love about your team. Everybody that I've dealt with at Phonexa has always been, now that we have a shared Slack channel, if there's an issue, we're on it. And I think that boutique feel, that's how we operate, I know that's how you operate, is very important. And I think just being competitive, because if you're not competitive with the campaign, what is it, 80% of the campaigns fail? I don't know what the number is, but if you run 10 campaigns, 10 of them are not gonna work, right? You might get 2 to 3, you might get 30%, I don't know, depending upon what it is and what client and vertical. But at the end of the day, it's managing a campaign is just all about being competitive and make sure your team is accountable and that everybody is fixing the problem, because there's always problems with campaigns. And if the consumer raises their hand, we have to get that person in front of a salesperson. That's it. Regardless on how we do it, whether it's your component that's really getting it to get in the funnel, or is it us? It just all has to be working like in perfect harmony, or as we know, it's fragmented media. So now you actually have that consumer in your CRM. What are you going to do to squeeze that, to make sure that you make the margin that you're going for, that you can scale?
Correct. No, that makes sense. I really thought that was kind of going to be what you were going to touch on. You know, I'm pretty pedantic and polarizing in my approach to certain things, and that's why I think our businesses are working together so well, because I'll give you an example. You know, when we first launched our partnership, obviously we talked a good game, we came to a show like this, everything seemed like it made sense for us to work together. Then we had our first client. And that's always the fun part, and I always say to the team, like, you know, the true test is this first client. And actually we had a couple of they weren't issues, it was us learning to communicate, engage with each other. You know, we just built the integration. So just to touch on that as well, Phonexa, Whitetail, fully integrated. We can touch a little bit more on what that means in a moment. But from our perspective, we always try and build integrated partnerships where, you know, we're a tracking platform. We can't be hypocrites in what we preach. We preach in really having single source of truth, as much data and evidence in the system as possible to really understand what business decisions to make next. You know, we power CMOs and marketers to go and make those performance-based decisions. So whenever we build these types of partnerships, we try and build it from a fully integrated perspective. Get me that data, get me that visibility, and then we can go and make those decisions.
100%.
Otherwise, you know, that you, like to your point, fragmented systems. As soon as you start fragmenting systems, you're kind of only as strong as your sort of weakest point, if that kind of makes sense. And the fragmented areas are typically the weak points. So anyway, we built that integration, then we had this client, and to your point, the Slack channel that we're using. And I remember saying to our team, you know, the true test here on Whitetail is how they handle this. You know, let's give them the chance to actually impress us, and you guys knocked it out the park. So to give you guys the flowers. Appreciate the comments about our team. I'll say your team are equally as impressive. You know, you guys responded very quickly. The client was very happy, and then the next point is I'm engaging with the team and saying, let's go find more. Let's go do more of these partnerships, and that's kind of where we're at. So
absolutely
happy with that.
Look, it always makes, you know, when we were talking about this before we were on camera, is that when you do make a referral, whatever it is, it could be an insurance agent, it could be a real estate agent, and they don't deliver, that person is not going to go talk to that agent. They're going to talk to you and say, hey, why did you refer that person? Or family members referring. I try to always stay away from it, but in business, it's critical, right? So I have to be, we're fully vetted, you're fully vetted, we're working together now, and we always want to know when there are issues immediately, not, hey, a week ago, you guys did that, you waited a week to tell us this? Tell us right away, and we fix it.
Exactly.
Because that's what our team does, and that's what I'm really proud of. And, but yeah, there's a lot of things that I'm excited to do, and also just education too. I think marketers that are obviously doing pay-per-call, or anybody, they're more aware of what it is. But folks that are doing digital marketing, that are just getting leads directly into the CRMs of folks, or they're hosting and posting or whatever they're doing, they don't really know the nuts and bolts of the outbound process.
Correct.
And they're just all about, hey, you know, the marketer is getting yelled at from the client because the data is not good. Have you ever approached the topic of, do you know when the lead posted in the CRM and when it actually was attempted, not contacted, just attempted? And then you might find this big delta that you're like, I can't believe it took a day or 5 minutes or 3 hours, but it should be instantly. It should be under a second.
It's a good touch point to touch on and actually tangent into something, you know, about the partnership that we've got here. So how this partnership came about, you know, Phonexa, if you don't know, we're a tracking and attribution platform, specifically in web leads and calls. And we see a lot of clients, you know, have a problem in their business, and we help them solve that from a tracking and attribution perspective, which is great. You know, to my point earlier, we practice what we preach. We encourage, you know, single source of truth, getting all that data into one place, and really allowing your analysts or your marketing team to go and make those smart decisions. And we have a great onboarding team. You know, some of those are the people that you mentioned a second ago in some of our Slack channels, and our team are very good at, you know, when we onboard a new client, we stage it. So we say, okay, what's the first Port, we're going to start with web leads, for example. Okay, we're going to start with your forms and your funnels. Great. Then we're going to move on to your calls. Then we might move on to some of your media buying verticals, that kind of thing. So irrelevant of the stage, let's say, let's assume we get to a stage with a client where they're fully onboarded. Great, we have a meeting with that client, they're super happy. 9 times out of 10, our clients are super happy. Go on G2 and take a look at our reviews. But my point here is the next stage that we get to is they'll often say, I don't know how to scale it now. So I can see everything, everything's in-house, it's great, thank you. You guys have actually enabled us to really visualize everything. But actually, how do we take it to the next level? And I think a lot of customers in this industry, media buyers in this industry think, first of all, tracking it is a huge point to tick off. But they sometimes think, okay, tracking it is going to mean scale. Well, you still need to actually do something. You still need to move some pins in your organization to actually go away and make it scale. And particularly you mentioned here the web lead side of things, and you're absolutely right, and that's why I want to touch on this. We get a lot of clients, they track all their web leads, they understand from a ROAS perspective to the cent exactly how their campaigns are performing. But they are still a law unto Google or a law unto Meta, they're a law unto everything else where actually they have their marketing budgets. Half of the game is monetizing their existing customers or their existing media spend, as opposed to just saying, I want to spend 10 times as much. Right? So, they might be strapped to budgets to say, okay, I'm spending, 10 million a month or whatever it might be. My CEO or our founders are not going to let me double that. So how do I drive more customers out of that 10 million? And we see one of the biggest drop-off points in terms of conversion is that slow rate to contact. And we can spot it from a mile off, and we are not a managed service from that perspective. So that's why this partnership is great. We are actively engaging with a mutual client right now where we're launching some re-engagement campaigns with them. So let's talk about how you would approach that as Whitetail. So Phonexa client comes to you, I'm meeting you at a show and I'm saying, George, I've got this customer, they're spending this much, they're generating 5,000 leads a week, and this is their conversion metrics. What is your approach to being able to nurture those leads to drive as many consumers to their agents as possible? So talk me through that.
Yeah, so there's a couple things that we can do just depending upon the age of the data. Obviously make sure it's compliant, right? That's first and foremost. I think we have a product, I think everybody has an AI product now, but just being able to dial on that data, depending upon how old it is, use our AI agent to requalify that person, right? Based on the disposition that we're getting back. It's crazy to see some of these campaigns, the advertiser's not passing back the disposition. And then they want us to optimize, what do you want us to say? Did the person, are they not interested right now? Check back with me in a couple weeks. All those dispositions matter to be able to build the cadence to contact these folks. Hey, I'm better at SMS, or contacting me, phone is better. This is a landline. Whatever it is, we need to understand all those dispositions before we start building that cadence. And just also really touch on the spam remediation part, making sure that your numbers are clean. And then when they're not, that we clean them for you, and we make sure that you're always outbounding with a clean number, just because if you're not doing that, then what's the point, right? And really understanding, when I got to the side and working with Whitetail, coming from the performance marketing side and understanding all the different carriers, from the T-Mobiles, Verizon, all the different ones, and how we have relationships with all of them, and understanding which ones, and if you call a number too many, I'm not going to say our secret sauce, but there's a certain cadence. If you call them too much in a day, you will get flagged immediately. So we make sure that we don't do that. So there's all these things, and that's kind of how we approach it. But I think one of the bigger things too is just really understanding what type of intent it is, because we don't know, did this come from, and that's why I love partnering with you, because once we get in contact with the consumer, where is it getting routed? Is it getting routed to an opener, a junior salesperson, versus a closer, this person's ready to go, and whatever vertical, let's say it's a higher ticket item, that's going to a closer. And I think that's a huge component, rather than, hey, we have this DID, and I've seen it all, but if you can have it really where it's more sophisticated and the person has a proper tech stack, has a Phonexa, has a Whitetail, then you're ready to scale. Don't scale and then have a homegrown system and then kind of back up and say, now we need to put in really good call tracking and attribution and intent and get a really good dialer because ours is not really performing where it is. I'm like, well, if you have everything formulated and put in at the beginning and you're ready to go, that's how you build it. Because when the lead gets posted in and you don't have these components in, you can't point your finger at the media source.
Correct. Yeah.
Because you have all these holes that you need to plug first. But if you have a good tech stack, then you can start talking to all your marketers and say, hey, look, can you tweak the demographic? Hey, this time of day works better. Then you can really refine. But if you don't have all those in place and you're yelling at the marketer, that's just not fair.
I think, great point. And I heard a really cool phrase here recently. I think it was at maybe LeadsCon last year, a talk I watched. Not all leads are equal. So we see so many media buying agencies or even call centers, whoever it might be, trying to treat every lead as equal, which is ultimately what often leads to this backlog of unserviced customers where there's just this huge pot of equality, let's call it, where we say we generate 5,000 leads a day, and how can you possibly work them all equally? Right. So something that we preach, and this is why these partnerships are fun, is because we kind of preach the same thing, where it's make it performance based, let consumers engage with you in the way that they want to, and that's something that we really help a lot of clients do. Where, let's say for example, they were only web lead generators, they'd never generated calls, for example. These partnerships allow customers to dip their toe into the call space first of all. So I'll give you an example. We help them set up some, just initially, inbound calls. So my conversation to them is often, why are you assuming customers don't want to talk to you? Why don't you let those top of funnel, or actually bottom of funnel, hot leads that just, they find your service by whatever metric they find it, and they just want to buy it. Those customers exist, believe it or not. If your media buying team are doing things properly, those customers exist. So don't put them into the same pot as every single other customer that you're buying, because you could potentially lose them. And those are the customers that run your business. So allow them to come via an inbound call, and to your point, route them directly to the right agent. Do some AI qualification. We have an AI IVR as well, and do some AI supplemental qualification, do some third-party data appends, all this kind of stuff. My point is, get them out of the sales cycle, through the sales cycle as quickly as possible, so you can move on to the, mid-hanging fruit, let's call it. The customers that is actually going to make up the bulk of your traffic, which is these customers that are going to go through the normal sales cycle. So let's assume they engage with you via a web form, and they come into this pot. To your point here, putting them all into the same pot and assuming they're all going to engage the same way is never going to work. So this partnership here, we allow our clients to actually focus on what they're best at. Most of our clients are service providers of some sort, right? Financial services, home services, that kind of thing. And they built that business because they understand the industry, but they don't always understand how to actually sell or how to actually contact these. There's often areas of the business that they're not experts in. So we preach, partnering with people that are best in class. I would say, I hope, is going to be somewhat biased, but let's throw some bias out there right now. We build a best-in-class tracking platform. There's very little we won't be able to allow you to track. There's obviously alternatives out there, but we're very insistent in giving our customers flexibility on just how much they can do within the system. So then we partner with people like Whitetail that I would regard as best-in-class in what they do. And what it allows our customers to do, or our clients to do, is focus on the parts that they are best at, which is use my system to track, use this system to engage, and then use your team to sell, essentially.
That's what they want.
Kind of do what you want to do. And it simplifies everything. There's so many businesses out there that say, okay, I want to try and do it all. But typically speaking, one or two or three of those elements are running at 50% effectiveness, which means you're losing out to your competitors, right?
Correct.
So, yeah. Any points to add to that? Are you in agreement?
No, 100%. I could listen to you talk all day. That's good stuff. I think, look, you have to, sometimes you look at your tech stack and you're like, oh, I can get, we already have a system that's half that cost. But yet you go and pay with a system like ours, if you have to pay more, but this is the performance that you're going to get.
Correct.
This is the insight that you're going to get.
Quantify it.
Look at something that's going to have, be able to handle scale.
Yep.
That's the biggest thing, because at the end of the day, like you said, our CEO, Nick Newsom for Whitetail, he is all about all of our customers. They want inbound calls going to their sales floor.
Yep.
That's it. And then it's very important, right, with your call tracking piece and routing, you want all of those calls going to the right people because, like we touched on this earlier, you want all your sales staff to have good morale the whole week. Not, hey, why are we getting these late? No, if you want your closers to get the highest intent leads from, XYZ sources that always crush it, get it to those guys. You don't want going back and forth.
Yep.
Like leads getting routed to the wrong place can really ruin.
It's funny you
Somebody's
say that.
Like a pitcher, right? Yeah. They're pitching a no-hitter. Everybody leaves them.
Yeah.
They're like 20, 30 feet. They're just keep them over there. Don't bother them. And I think that's the way with your sales staff. It needs to be that, right?
It's you're so right. So before I was in this space, I've done a few other things. One of which was I actually worked in a call center. I was selling life and health insurance. I was 17, and I remember Halloween. Don't ask me the year. I dialed personally 490 numbers on Halloween. 0 contact. No one picked up. And
wait a minute, you dialed?
I personally dialed 490. Yeah, I remember it. I have the weird photographic memory.
I've hit 100. I've never done 400.
Oh no, it was that bad. There was 0 contact.
No,
the plot of data was that bad. I was a dialer. That's literally what I was that day.
Did you drink heavily that night?
Demoralizing. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't stay there much longer after that anyway. But you're absolutely right. I just remember, and I was doing pretty good. I was in the top 5% in the company in terms of sales. And I was sat there, and I was like, again, I was 17, so I didn't really push this as hard as I would have done if I was a little bit more older and wiser in the space. But I was like, why is one of the top salespeople sat here doing this right now? I don't get it.
Right.
And that was pre AI dialers and pre all this other stuff. And we were buying bad leads, and it's actually how I got into this space. I actually wanted to go and generate my own leads and media buy myself, and I started doing that. And then anyway, long story, I end up becoming a media buyer and then go down this path. But I just remember it so well. Halloween, $490, and I just went home and I was like, I can't do this anymore.
That's draining.
And there'll be so many different stories like that. And to your point, you're absolutely right. The goal here of any service provider is get your agents selling, get your agents doing the part that you're actually paying them to do, which is really the crux of this.
100%.
I've got some interesting stats I want to just talk about just to see if it brings up any topics. So 80% of sales require 5+ follow-ups. Most teams stop after 1 to 2. Do you guys see something similar with clients that you partner with?
Absolutely. I mean, depending upon the vertical, I think like sometimes it'll tail off. But I think in mortgage, sometimes what happens is that if you lose the business to somebody else, because a lot of these mortgage leads are shared, and after like the 14th day, they're collecting all the paperwork from the client, and then it just falls through. Something happens, right? So it's a good time to maybe lob in like a call week 2, right? But I think every vertical is different. But I think sometimes we really focus on a 3 to 4 day cadence. Sometimes it's a 2-week cadence. It's whatever the client wants. But I think, that's just such a tough question to kind of nail down. But I
don't think there's a silver bullet. I think what the stat is trying to say is essentially, and to your point, you guys have incorporated AI and particularly performance-led analytics to kind of let the numbers kind of walk you through what you should be doing.
Sure.
And you can then be industry agnostic, right? So it kind of doesn't really matter what the vertical is. Eventually, we're going to have the right cadence to be recontacting these customers. That's the point.
Sure.
So many agencies, networks, call centers don't operate with that data first mindset. And to my point earlier, everyone treats they treat every lead as equal. They throw it all into one pot, and it's like let's just go, and hopefully we make an ROI out of it. But actually, then there's partners like yourselves that exist that you go in and say, okay, no, we're going to analyze everything. We're going to find the sweet spot, and once we've found that sweet spot, and then there might be multiple sweet spots. To your point, you might do a re-engagement at the point in which we know they were last online, for example, or when the lead came in, to your point, and that's why this partnership works, where our attribution platform can pass data like that, which is time of origination, all this other type of data that can feed your system to kind of give you these other touch points to make some best guesses.
Absolutely.
And a lot of it is, and I say best guess, a lot of it is that, but it's initially a best guess, and then eventually the numbers tell you, nope, it worked, or no, it didn't work, and you kind of go from there.
I agree. I mean, look, speed to lead is obviously the most critical, especially when you're buying shared leads. Exclusive, everybody's like, oh, you can wait a little bit longer. No, I think it's speed to lead is as fast as you can get in front of that consumer.
Yep.
And continue building that cadence with SMS, email, multiple phone calls a day, but not too many. You'll get flagged.
Yep.
That's our secret sauce.
Yep.
And I think going down that route and being able to hit them on all touch points. People still answer emails, but it's just like almost like a redundancy piece, right? Like phone call, SMS, and just making sure that you can keep them on a cadence until they, DNC or whatever it is, like, hey, don't call me anymore. But at the end of the day, the intent does drop.
Yep.
But speed to lead is so critical, and not getting flagged as spam.
Yeah.
Because you can call them and in under a second, once it posts in your CRM and you get flagged as spam, you can't be operating that way. And I think a lot of people aren't remediating their numbers, and that's what we specialize in, because the contact rate is, look, if you're getting 100 leads and you're at 15-20% contact rate, it's not going to work.
Yep.
You need to be contacting 40-50%. If it's high intent data from AdWords on a comparison site, let's say, that's 50% plus, have to be.
Yep.
And you're paying a premium for those leads. So let's not burn that money. And these sales staff, they're not getting those leads, and they want those leads. And a quiet sales floor is probably not just your marketing, but it's definitely your outbound system.
Yeah. Just to touch on that, you're absolutely right about the sales floor side of things. I just thought of something that we are seeing with this partnership. Now that we've built this integration between our systems, the Whitetail system talking back to Phonexa and telling and firing us dispositions to your point, it's so important to feed your dialing tool with those dispositions so it can do its thing, if it's obviously capable of doing things that the Whitetail system can do. But then also to close the loop and pass those dispositions back to the tracking platform too. And that's obviously what we've built, where, yes, sales agents are getting more calls. They're getting, they're speaking to more relevant consumers, qualified consumers ready to actually be pitched to, which is obviously the value. But the marketing team, which is the team that I've also seen get really excited about, partnerships like this, they're getting more data to pass back to their media buying platforms. So
that's what they want.
That's what they want. They're some of their biggest gripes, and I've run marketing teams, and a lot of the gripes often is we're spending all the money, we're generating the leads, and then the sales teams are just saying that it's not relevant, or it's this, it's that, but actually they're not, or they're not managing the CRM properly. That's another one. Like, they're not updating the CRM. They're not telling. They're saying everything was went to voicemail, everything, right? So partnering with an agency that's going to run this properly, firing the correct dispositions back to the attribution platform, which fires the correct distribution back to the media buying platform, means that you have a competitive advantage. I'm going to call it a competitive advantage because so few people actually do that properly. And when there's so few people that do it properly, that means anyone that does do it is going to have that advantage. Are able to fire that back to the media buying platform, and the Metas and the Googles and the Facebook can go and do their thing. And the algorithm's actually going to operate properly. So I just wanted to touch on it because so many people overlook that when actually we're talking about the sales side of things, but we're at a marketing conference, we're at a MarTech conference, and
all our peers are here, and they want it. I love when you're talking about this because at the end of the day, as a marketer, sometimes I'm overcorrecting the campaign when the outbound is broken. So guess what? I might have the campaign dialed in, but I have no idea that it's dialed in.
Correct.
And so I've made the mistake of bringing on an advertiser that really wasn't ready to work with us. And so it's a very difficult relationship because the campaign doesn't back out for whatever reason because they're not ready. I'm not saying the marketing is always perfect, but going forward, it's, I'd like to ask them, can you walk me through your tech stack? And they're like, well, why are you asking? We want to know if our data and our leads that we're going to be sending to you is going to work, right? And let's not waste each other's time. And if you don't have the proper tech stack, I have some recommendations for you to lay that foundation first, and then we can start building on that. And they really appreciate that you're going to walk away from the business and you guys go get ready, or hey, let's get ready and then talk to me in 2 to 3 weeks because you'll be ready.
Yep.
And then your CRM's connected to this, and your dialer, and your call tracking, and your intent, and everything is just dialed in. Now we can go, and the marketers can do their thing, because every partner that's here, we're working really hard arbitraging media with our own dollars.
Yep.
And sending you traffic.
Yep.
And then you're reporting back that it's not working, and your solution is your tech stack is not ready.
Yep.
So make sure that that's ready, and I think that's a conversation that we need to have with, everybody's excited. You want to bring on a new client.
Yep.
You're like, hey, we just closed so-and-so, and we're going to launch the campaign in a week, and they're not ready.
Mm-hmm. We do the same thing. We're it sounds cliche, but it's, that consultative approach where,
Yep.
I've got a sales team and they have targets and they like selling and they like closing deals, but I bang that drum to be like, there's bad business to be done, right?
Yep.
And there's wrong deals to do. I would rather sign that client at the right time in their path when they are best ready to adapt to a robust system that we have here. We're a plug and play system to an extent, but we require some level of investment and ownership from the team running it to actually really give it the time of day to get the most out of it. We do have a managed service team that we can touch upon maybe in a second, but typically speaking, we are really wanting to qualify prospects in the Phonexa pipeline to kind of say, okay, are you in the right frame of mind, right business process to actually adapt to a system like this right now? And so often they're not, and we say, go away and do this. We see so many people come in and say, I'm generating web leads. I want to start generating calls. And I say, okay, cool. Once that's set up, what next? Like who are you going to distribute the calls to? Oh, I'm not sure. And I'm like, okay. Well, we can help make some introductions and we can get involved. But realistically, you haven't thought enough about this yet.
Yeah.
You've seen other people do it, and you've heard it's a good thing to do. But you need to invest a little bit more intellectual capital on your side to kind of work out whether this is going to be a thing for you. And 9 times out of 10, they respect that, and they're grateful to go, okay, well, we can somewhat predict the future. We've seen this thousands of times, right? You solve that tracking problem, and then the next step is, okay, now what kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, partnerships like this, and I think we work quite similarly where, we'll quite often just brainstorm on a certain idea where you just say, oh, I've got this client, and actually they have this problem, and I'm like, oh, well, this piece of tech here would solve that, and actually it would enable you guys to go and do more of what you're specialized in as well. That's kind of the point of partnerships like this, is, to my point earlier, let everyone do the part that they 100%. Are best served to do. I don't want to get involved in your side. You guys have forgotten more than I know about that space, and the great thing about it is, mutually our partnership can allow each other to kind of specialize in our own area. And I think to touch on the next point, to tangent somewhere else as well, we spoke around, and again, I want to kind of open this up to you to get some ideas from you, but obviously this partnership will hopefully, maybe I'm somewhat trying to predict the future as well in the future partnerships and clients that we work on together, enable you to work, commercially slightly different with some of your clients as well. So these reactivation campaigns, being able to then feed that into a call tracking and distribution system to route that consumer to, let's say, the right agent, the right team. Maybe they want to actually route it. They want to sell this pot of data to someone else, actually a third-party provider that they've partnered with for, let's say it's a specific type of insurance that actually they don't deal with in-house. They want to supplement that and pass that on somewhere else. You guys would be able to distribute that and facilitate that for them with this type of tooling. So talk me through, what you potentially see that becoming and how we should, make sure that sort of comes to fruition, and how you can engage with your clients best with that.
Yeah, no, I think especially with what we're doing now with a lot of our clients, introducing. Obviously, we have outbound solution, but we're also using our AI agents to go out and make those phone calls, connect with those consumers, qualify them, and doing it on a duration base. Because not only are we, sometimes most of the clients that we do or that we work with, we bill on usage basis, minutes, and then also we do it on performance, right? Like we'll do things where if it's a minute or greater in certain verticals, it could be 2 minutes or whatever it is, but also a cost per transfer, right? Like really focus on that, or it could be a cost per ingested lead. Whatever works for them, and we price correct to make sure that they're hitting their ROAS. with a usage model that works for them.
Yep.
It could be ingesting a lead, like I said. So there's a lot of different ways that we just started doing that because we see that being something where if it's higher intent, right, it's going to be less usage because that's going to connect, it's going to route the call, and then if they're routing in lower intent data, it's going to rack up the minutes. Okay, maybe we do it differently, we do it on it. So there's a lot of different ways that we can do it, as long as it's backing out for the client, it's backing out for us, and it's sustainable. You know, like just price correcting is often, you know, overlooked in the space. It's like, this is what it costs, and they start running the campaign, it doesn't work, then you have to work with the advertiser, you have to work with the affiliate to say, hey, this is, hey, if you can't sell it to us for this, then they're gonna sell it to somebody else. But you always have to price correct. But I think just, you know, working with you guys is gonna be really exciting because of just that element of the routing and being able to, because we have a client right now that they have all these different lead sources and they all have it labeled with their intent, and it goes to like a couple different DIDs. Like just two, where there's all these different low intent, medium intent, and then like, okay, so the low and medium are going to this team, and then the high intent, it's like, it almost could go to maybe more teams.
Well, you'll also
that,
probably find
right?
those low and medium intents is that's a guess, right? So if they're not using the right attribution and you know, tracking tooling, you know, we see this all the time. You know, a media buyer that's spending a lot of money on Google, they assume their most expensive traffic is the highest intent traffic, right? But that's not always the case. They're not actually using intent-based touch points to measure that. You make a good point. I wanted to talk about that as well in terms of, you know, when you're actually feeding all that information back to measure on intent. And this is where I guess our partnership gets particularly interesting. You know, you're explaining the campaign there really nicely, and then what our partnership will do is within Phonexa's tracking system, you can actually engage with your clients and actually say, okay, here's, you know, all of your real high, medium, and low intent consumers, and here's where they're coming from. Here's all the, you know, you feed me the data and you give me all the attribution points of where the customers came from. Here's where they're all coming from. So now we get into predictive analytics where you say, okay, if you go and spend another X amount on this campaign, we're going to get this many top of funnel, bottom of funnel, mid funnel leads, and therefore we need, you know, we need to re-engage in, you know, a bigger AI agent tooling, or you guys need to actually, you need to hire more people for this campaign here on your side, because when you turn that media buy up, I know predictively just how many consumers we're going to generate for this funnel. So you actually need to get ready. We see it so many times where we solve the tracking problem, which often does lead to increase in volume of leads, because obviously they're attributing everything, and the visibility is there, and they're feeding all that data back to the media buying channels, and then they're not ready for it. They're like, okay, I'm not ready for all these leads. What am I supposed to do with it?
Oh my gosh! So you brought up a really good point, because sometimes it's weekends. Sometimes they have a campaign that is really, really backing out good, and they want to expand to the weekends, but they don't have any they don't have any agents ready. But just going up and down, where they're trying to optimize their current media with their sales staff of 30, 40, 100, whatever. Then they find this really good lead source, and now it's like, hey, we got to hire more agents. So just being able to predict, saying, hey, based on what you just said, you know, if we just increase the spend by 10, 15, 30 more %, whatever it is, we just need to hire 3 more people. Right? So that's stuff that most companies don't have. And I think that is the future, or it is the present. And I think that's where I want to be, right? And I think, you know, your company and my company, we're focused on these folks scaling, right? We're mainly a usage base, right? Both of our models are similar in that regard, but we can make recommendations to, you should go talk to this lead source. They're amazing. Like that's what's good about working with either of us, is we have connections and we know the lead sources that perform really well. Like I've worked with all of them from before I came to Ytel, so I know all those folks that we can help and make those introductions, because when you go to Affiliate Summit, any of these other conferences, it's a big family, right? And we know who the good sources are, we know who the medium sources are, and we know who the lower intents are. They're all useful, right? If you have a good dialer, you can throw anything you want in there and then track them properly and route them properly. you can have a successful campaign. I won't mention the company, but I know one of our clients that uses our platform. They put every type of intent into the system, and our dialer goes out and gets them, converts it into a phone call, and they crush it.
Yep.
Right? And they're not, oh, we just need, the companies that, oh, we just want high intent leads, because you guys are manually dialing, because whatever you're doing, you need to have the proper tech stack. I know I've said it like 8 times during this, during our conversation, but it's true.
Yep.
You want to scale. If you just want to have 5 to 10 agents and do what you're doing, by all means, it's probably not. You know what I mean? It
Well,
could be,
you
but,
touch a good point. Like, in terms of a lot of people talking about those high intent models where they say, and they say that because they want to stay lean, or they want to do X, Y, Z. You're saying you want to have your 5 to 10 agents or whatever.
Yeah.
I've seen it where actually using best in class setup, for example, allows those teams to stay lean.
Sure.
So actually where you're utilizing.
No, I'm incorrect on that.
Yeah.
So I'll back off.
You're right. I think it's nuanced.
You need to be efficient.
I think it's nuanced where a lot of companies, they say about high intent because they do want to stay lean, and they think building best-in-class technology and us sort of saying, okay, well, you're still going to get the high intent, but actually what you're going to do is you're going to have a topographical view of the medium and lower intent, and actually there's business to be made there because you're competing with your competitors selling to those medium and low intent consumers as well. So when your source of traffic is media buying campaign, you're naturally competing with these other networks out there, right? And if you say you just want high intent, well, you're already losing.
100%.
Because guess what? They're going to spend more money with Google. They're going to get prioritized by those channels, and you're going to come to me and say, well, now I can't even get the high intent anymore.
Right.
Because
Prices
someone
are
else
going up
exactly
every year.
So
every year.
How can my tech stack allow me to become ultra efficient? I still want to stay lean. That's no problem, and that's kind of where this consultative approach comes in, where you kind of say, "Cool, give me your non-negotiables." And they're like, "I want to stay lean. This is the team I want to keep." Okay, cool. So let's walk through just how much you can drive from your campaigns with this lean team by building a best-in-class tech stack. So we're going to automate all this stuff. So that means this person previously that was your BDM or your SDR, whatever you want to call it, that was all day dialing, doing this or whatever. Actually, the system's going to do that now for you. So he can now be a sales guy. So you're one sales guy plus. Great. No more seats, but 100%. One extra sales guy actually on the phones, closing deals, generating you revenue. Then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to automate all of the attribution and the reporting. So your current marketing team, as opposed to working 40, 50 hours a week building reports and pivot tables and all this stuff to predict how they're going to go and spend, it's automated because
that's what we want.
Exactly.
Right? That's what any sales agent wants. They want, when they get off the phone call, that transcription goes into Salesforce or whatever CRM they're using, HubSpot, and the intent is there, and then they just go on to the next. Not wasting 15, 20 minutes. All the salespeople are just going to love this, right? Like that's what we want, right? We want that inputted into the system, onto the next. And that's, ideally, if we can get there, it's just getting more people on the phone, having more conversations, and making more money. And the business owners will obviously love that.
Exactly. Focus on revenue generation. A lot of these conversations, they're not sexy, right? Business owners quite often,
it's in the trenches.
They glaze over, right? You're talking about all this stuff, and they're like, just tell me how much more money it's going to make me.
Right.
They're the right questions to ask, absolutely. But really nowadays, you go and walk around the show here, and I'll tell you right now, there's a lot of people out there doing things, maybe not as well as they could, but there's a lot of elite operators out there now. Especially with the access to information, and hopefully some of this information is useful to some, whoever tunes into this, but the amount of information that's out there, you're competing with better agencies right now. You're competing with better marketers right now. So if you're really not going to pay attention to these problems, ultimately, you're gonna come unstuck at some point, right? And eventually the leads are going to run out, or eventually the salespeople are going to become demoralized. To your point earlier, there's all these touch points that could lead to some kind of degradation within your business that ultimately a lot of founders overlook as a solvable problem by tech.
Yep.
right? Buzz and AI buzzword, and a lot of people think they can just throw AI in there and it fixes everything. Well, AI is great. AI is unbelievable, but that AI needs to be plugged into the right tech infrastructure.
Correct.
So it's being fed
With
the
the
right
right team.
information
Yes.
with the right team and the right, then you can go and hire the killer salespeople. You can go and get your killer CMO. That's he's going to have access to all the data under the sun, and you're running things best in class. I'm going to round out unless there's anything else you want to sort of touch upon. I think
it's great. At the end of the day, everybody here, we all want multiple insertion orders with multiple companies that last for years, right? We all have those campaigns that you get they get that IO and it lasts for 2-3 years. 4 years, whatever, and you're just making so much money with these companies, right? Everybody's making money, but there's a lot of folks that come to these shows and they're just focused on that, getting that one IO, and they're not focused on actually delivering, or almost over-delivering, and stay there, because maybe you're focused on margin, maybe you're focused on just getting that deal, and that whatever it is, it just needs to be sustainable, right? And I think, again, if you have the proper technology in place, you can take, there's a lot of folks at these shows that the intent ranges. It's a broad spectrum. But if you have that technology in place, you can put whatever you want and get it in, and then just squeeze all those lead sources. And that lead source that's like, you know what? My data has never worked this well, or my leads have never worked this well. And they've probably, because a lot of people are working really hard to get these leads, and they might not be working with the right company. And when you put in that IO for the first time, right, and you're on one of my line items, and I've just brought you on as a new campaign, I don't look at the other ones first. I know what those are doing. But that one at the very bottom, and I just spent, 5, 10 grand, 30 grand, 50 grand, and whatever we're spending, and you look right at the contact rate's the first thing I looked at. First thing you look at, and then all of a sudden you back in from there. And if that's not good, you immediately know.
Exactly, and you're right, because those KPIs are real truth tellers within an organization. I've said it a few times. You can probably do a little excerpt of how many times I've said single source of truth. My team tell me all the time. Such a buzzword. It is a buzzword, but when you can have that single source of truth, you can pick those. I call them jugular KPIs. That contact rate KPI there, where you're like, okay, if I launch a new campaign, what's the one identifier that I'm going to look at to be able to predict, is this going to go somewhere for my business? I know what contact rate my business relies on in order to actually operate. But then when a partner like you comes in, and we can obviously make introductions to our existing clients to Whitetail to say, you look at it, and let's say contact rate is 7% or whatever it is, and it depends on the industry. And if you can confidently look at it and go, I reckon I can get that to 11.
Absolutely.
That 4% uplift is typically the margin that most businesses run.
Doesn't take much.
It's
funny that you bring that up. 4 points, 5 points is game changer.
Yeah, it sounds minimal, right? But actually, when you say, those. You got to think of it. I think of it holistically quite often when you look at stuff like that. That 4% is customers that wanted this service, right? And if you don't speak to them and find them the service, your competitor does. They don't. Some of them leave the marketplace. Obviously, some of them say, actually was just shopping around, not interested. But a huge amount of those customers were shopping, with real intent to actually make a purchase. And if you're not going to be the one to speak to them and convert them, guess what? Your competitors are. So a lot of people get unexcited. They get underwhelmed by that idea of 4%, and you're like, okay, well that's 4% on your bottom line. Great. But it's also 4% off your competitor's bottom line. And when you think of it like that, that's an 8% swing all of a sudden. And these are amateur numbers. Like, I know you guys have doubled and tripled contact rate for some of your clients as well. But my point is just getting okay with the fact that a 4% swing could be what is the differentiating factor between a campaign working and not working. And how many times, you touched upon it a second ago, how many verticals have you had clients in where you say, I don't do that anymore, because actually it didn't work for me.
Right.
And you're like, well, talk me through your process. Talk me through
where
are you getting the leads from? Who was working them? How much experience are you having in it? And all this kind of stuff. You're like, well, I think you should try again.
It's funny that you bring that up, because that's an exercise that now is always something that I do. I was like, just send me a report of 100 leads. That's all you need to send me. Just show me, there's no data required. Just saying when the lead posted, and when it actually outbound.
Yep.
Not connected. Yep. And all you have to do, and all of a sudden the CEO will call, the IT guy will call, everybody will start talking. I'm like, we found a problem.
Yeah, you're like,
so
damn right you did.
As the marketer, we're not the problem.
Yeah.
Right. And that's like, that's when we start to figure out, like, hey, you need a system like ours. You know, and I'm talking from my performance marketing career. Now I'm at a telco doing, outbound software it's a new thing for me, but it's like the final boss, as my kids would say, right? It'll make or break a campaign. Right? It's not just the media, right? The media is just one piece.
Absolutely. You're speaking my language, George.
Yep.
Good. I've enjoyed the conversation.
Stuff. Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Hopefully this was useful to those watching. I would encourage anyone that's found any of this stuff interesting, if you too like talking about 4% uplift and fun things like that, then reach out. Hopefully we'll be able to show you some better improvements than that. But, hit us up on LinkedIn. You'll be able to contact myself. Let's jump on a call and see how we can help you. Be sure to reach out to George as well. He's, like I said, 10-year professional athlete, and if that doesn't inspire you to speak to him, then you heard him throw some nuggets of information in there as well. So enjoyed the conversation, George. We'll see you around, and thanks again.
Thank you.